welcome. My name's Rebecca McGrath and this video is a quick guide to our tracking system that we use to assess your child's learning and development at the nurseries. At the nursery, we follow the principles and the requirements of the Early Years Foundation stage, the EYFS. This sets the standards that all early years providers must meet to ensure that children learn and develop well and are kept healthy and safe. The EYFS sets out the 7 areas of learning and development that must shape our educational programme in the nursery. So we have 7 areas of learning and development. We have communication and language, physical development, personal, social and emotional development, literacy, mathematics, understanding the world and expressive arts and design. All the areas of learning and development are important and are interconnected. These 7 areas are split into 2 groups. So the first group is the prime areas. So the 3 prime areas are particularly crucial for igniting children's curiosity and enthusiasm for learning and for building their capacity to learn, form relationships and thrive. These 3 prime areas are communication and language, physical development, and personal, social and emotional development. These 3 prime areas are the 3 that we concentrate on directly from birth. And then as children develop, we widen that out into what we call the next 4 areas, which are the specific areas. There are 4 areas left in here. We have literacy, mathematics, understanding the world, and expressive arts and design. So as we move to these areas, the 3 prime areas that we've just seen in the previous slide are continually strengthened and applied. So this slide then brings the 7 areas of learning back together. So we have the top 3 prime areas: communication, language, physical development, personal, social and emotional development, and then the 4 specific areas underneath: literacy, maths, understanding the world and expressive arts and design. For our staff working with the youngest children, they focus strongly on the 3 prime areas at the top to build the foundations for successful learning. So we focus on these 3 prime areas first, and then the idea is that we will build the foundations for successful learning that will then come in the wider 4 specific areas underneath. It's important to remember that the 3 prime areas reflect the key skills and capacities all children need to develop and learn effectively and become ready for school. So it's important that we focus on those top 3 prime areas, because those are the primary skills that children will need to be able to access all of the specific areas underneath, and it gets them ready and sets them up for the rest of their learning life. So we focus on the 3 prime ones, and then as the children develop, the balance shifts towards a more equal focus across all 7 areas of learning as children grow in confidence and ability within the 3 prime areas. So we have these 7 areas of learning to focus on for our children at the nursery. So the question now is, how do we know what to teach the children and when, and how do children develop their learning across these areas from the very youngest age that we have right up to our preschool age range children? To help us with this, we use a key document called Development Matters, which sets out what, when and how children learn in the 7 areas of learning from birth all the way up to 5 years. We use this document as part of daily observation, assessment and planning. Development Matters is split up into the 7 areas of learning, and it sets out expectations of learning and development against children's age ranges from birth to 5 years. So on this example that we have here, it's a page from personal, social and emotional development, and it's covering the aspect of making relationships. You can see down the left hand side it covers the age ranges, which we'll talk about in a second, but in the first column it then talks about what are the learning expectations and developments of the children in this particular area of personal, social and emotional development, what the expectations are and the learning should look like at the different age ranges going from birth all the way up to preschool age range. So the first column is covering what a child is learning. And then the middle column, the purple column, talks about what adults can do. So this is guidance notes that the staff use for things to do with the children. And the final column, the green column, is about enabling environments, and that talks about how we can provide these learning experiences for the children. On a daily basis, we use this guide of development matters to decide on what areas to focus on for our children. So we'll look across the 7 areas depending on the children's age, and we'll plan activities to ensure that they develop the skills they need in all of these 7 areas of learning. So development matters is split up into age bands. So they are birth to 11 months, 8 to 20 months, 16 to 26 months, 22 to 36 months, 30 to 50 months, and 40 to 60 months. This then, the last age range, 40 to 60 months, then ends with an early learning goal, which children are assessed and expected to achieve by the end of reception year in school. So that's a formal point of assessment that schools do for children at the end of reception, which is the year that they turn 5. So the expectation in the early years is that the children will move through the bands, through the age band that are set out there, right up to 40 to 60 months, and then at the end of the 40 to 60 months band there's an early learning goal, which is further developed when they go into reception at school. You'll notice that the age bands overlap, and it's really important to note that children develop at their own rates and in their own ways. So the decision to overlap the age bands allows for children developing in different areas and at different rates at different ages. So there has this overlap to be able to compensate for that individual learning and development. The development statements and their order should not be taken as necessary steps for individual children, and they should not be used as checklists either. The age stage bands overlap because there are no fixed age boundaries, but it suggests a typical range of development across that age. So, when looking at 8 to 20 months, that then also falls into the 16 to 26 months, because again, it's not looking at a fixed age boundary, it's just suggesting a typical range of development. Now, the age bands in development matters are very useful to us, and these are what you will have seen when first settling your child into the nursery. We have collected all of the information from development matters within each age band, and for each age band we've taken the 7 areas of learning and put them all on a sheet, so that, as you can see for the example, this shows us the expectations of learning and development for a child aged between 16 to 26 months within each of the 7 areas of learning. And as you can see, because of the age of the child on the younger age range, the emphasis is more in the first 3 columns, which are the 3 prime areas. And we put all of this together and we use these age band cards to be able to determine whereabouts a child is currently working on. As said, what's important to note is it's not used as a checklist or a tick list where we tick through each of these points on this card. We're looking at each of the areas of learning and we're deciding where a child sits in terms of their knowledge and their understanding and their skills. And we also use this information on these age band cards to feed into our activities and our planning. So, for example, we may plan a maths activity which is about enjoying filling and emptying containers, which sits in the shape, space and measures aspect. So we use these with you as a parent when your child first starts nursery to create a baseline. So we work with you to determine which age band we're going to start your child from, and then we progressively move through using these cards for our day-to-day activities by identifying what the children need to learn or what they need to consolidate within the 7 areas. And there'll be more information on planning and what we teach the children in another video. This video focuses purely on assessment of children and determining whether they're on track with their learning and development. So let's look at the assessment aspect. So for this, we use Tapestry, which hopefully you will all have seen. So when children have achieved new skills or understanding in the 7 areas, we record this on Tapestry. So we record what they've learnt and how they did it, and identify which area of learning it comes under, and also within which age band they are currently working within. And then as a parent, you're then able to view these on your child's Tapestry account. We have 2 points in the year where we complete summative assessments on all of our children. So we do this in October and in March. And this gives us 2 decisive points where we stop, assess the children, and identify where each of the children are at in their learning and development. To do this assessment then, we use the observations and records stored on Tapestry, along with using development matters as a guide to making best fit summative judgments. So each key person takes time out to think about and assess the individual children and to decide where they are currently in their learning and development within the 7 areas. So they'll go through each of the 7 areas and they'll decide which age band they are sitting in at that particular time. So at this point, we then look at whether a child is showing typical development within the age bands identified, or where they may be at risk of delay or are ahead for their age. So these individual assessments for each child are then recorded on a summarised report and shared with parents and carers. So this next slide is an example of what an individual child's report looks like. So as you can see on here, you will see the 7 areas of learning all the way down. Within those 7 areas of learning, these are split up into sub areas. And so your child's key person will go through each of the 7 areas of learning individually and will determine which age band they are currently sitting at. And then this will obviously correlate with their actual age and will determine whether they are showing typical development for their age, or they're below their actual age or above their actual age. So at that point, it records what age your child is in months, time, the point that we're doing the assessment, and then it'll make that assessment for you to see. As said, the summative assessment picks up whether a child is currently showing a typical development or may have some areas that they still need to work on, or some areas that they're doing really well in and are ahead for their age. So these are shown up in 3 different colours: green for on track, red for some delay, and purple for ahead. So each child is discussed in detail with their key person and the manager, and where we have red or purple areas, we may then look at early intervention and look at putting in some support, some more targeted support to ensure that these areas are addressed. So for example, the red areas are targeted to ensure children further develop in this aspect, and we spend some time really focusing on those areas of red, because it may mean that we want to take some further discussions to see if further intervention is needed from either outside agencies, so for example speech therapy. And it's the same as with the purple areas. These are areas that we do target and continue to focus on, because we may want to develop this particular strength that a child may have. It's important to note at this point that we know these children really well, and we don't just, yes, we do the tracking at 2 points in the year, but on top of that, every 6 weeks, the key person, your child's key person, will meet with the manager. They have a meeting every 6 weeks where they discuss each of the individual children. They talk about their learning and development, and we pick up on whether we're having some early concerns for children in any of the 7 areas of learning. So when we do these reports, it's often known to the manager and the key person that these areas are going to be flagged up as red. It's also important to note that it is very common that children will flag up in red. Sometimes it's because they've focused on one area of the curriculum, particularly that they might have an interest in. Or it may be that often we find when they're flagged up as red is they're only just outside of their age band. So if you have a look at the report on the right-hand side, the child's age of tracking was between 27 to 29 months, and it uses this band, again, to just have a very loose assessment of the children, because we're always very aware that children will develop at different rates and at different times and sometimes different ages. So if you have a look, they're coming up as 27 to 29 months. That's their actual age that they're in. So if you have a look at the age bands that are flagged up as red, for those ones, the child has been assessed as being in the 16 to 26 months. So we're only talking about, the child is actually only sort of in the next month, the 27 month or 28 months. So they're only just outside of that age band. So that wouldn't particularly worry us too much, because they're only just sitting outside of what their actual age is. So that wouldn't cause us too much concern. So it's important to look when if your child comes up as red, it's important to look at their chronological age against what their age band is that they've been assessed at, and how far outside of that age band they're sitting at, which is what's caused it to be red. So it's very much we look at that. When your child has had this report done for them, if there are red areas flagged up, then we will organise a meeting to have with you, with your child's key person, so that you can discuss this red, and it will be a focus that we will have in the nursery, but it will also be a focus that will encourage you to look at home as well. So for this child on the right hand side, what's been flagged up is the communication and language and literacy as well. So there'd be lots of talking, lots of rhyme work, sharing of books, doing lots of focus that focuses around communication, language and literacy. So once we've created the individual children's reports, we pass those on to parents and meetings are organised accordingly. However, we don't just stop there with the information that we've gathered on each of our individual children. We also collect various types of valuable data by collectively taking all of the children's results from across the nursery, and we put it together in various forms so that we can use this information to further develop our teaching and learning, and also the care that we offer at the nursery. And by collectively analysing this as a management team, and with the managers and with the room leaders and also the key persons, we can look at patterns of things that are developing of the children's progression. So areas where the children are doing particularly well in, or areas where the children might be struggling with, and we're then able to focus them. So if we have a look at this next slide, it shows us, this is a really interesting point where we put all of the nursery, so all of the children in the nursery, we put them all together in one table, and we look at where they all are on track. So if you see right along the top line at the top of the sheet, there's the 7 areas of learning that we have, and then this shows the children running across in the rows, their current age, and then it shows us in very clear colours where the majority of children are on track and they're sitting within their typical age band and to match their learning and development. But then it also shows us where children's strengths are coming through, and also obviously where children are below their development point for their age. And this then we will then start to analyse this and start to look at reasons why this is coming through. Again, it may be that children have only just tipped into the next age band because of their age, in which case then we might then think, well, we're not too concerned about that because it's only been a month and that they're outside of that age band. Or it may start to get us thinking about certain subject areas that we might need to focus on. And so we'll look at different ways that we will analyse the data. So we may find one particular area of learning, so for example maths, where there are a number of children not quite reaching their typical development for their age. So when this is shown, we analyse this further to find reasons for this delay in development and progress. So for example, we'll look at teaching skills, and we may put some additional training in for the staff, or we'll look at the resources that we have. Do we have enough resources? Do we have enough of the right type of resources? So, we may organise future training or purchase more resources that will further children's math skills, so that we can ensure that all of our children are at least green across the nursery. So if you have a look at the next slide, this is the different groups that we look at to analyse our data. So we look at the whole nursery, which is the slide we've just shown you. We'll look at boys and girls, because this is another interesting one. We're constantly making sure that we don't have any gender issues with the curriculum that we offer and the activities, and making sure that boys and girls are equal in their development. So we split the children out and we analyse that data against boys and girls. We'll look at the class groups, so the age groups that we have in the nursery, ladybirds, butterflies, bees. We go through each of the class groups and we analyse just that particular group to make sure there's not an issue with one particular class of children where there's a few of them that are coming up as red. So we'll look at the class groups. We'll look at key person groups. So each key person that we have, we'll look at their key group of children and we'll put that together on an analysis sheet. And again, we look at the development of their own key children. We also look at school cohorts as well. So when your child starts in the nursery, they get put into a cohort of children that will go to school together, and that moves through the nursery. As they start as babies, we will then move them together. We ensure that they stay together in rooms so that they will be going to school at the same point. So we keep a track of the learning of school cohorts as well, and that's valuable data that we can use. So this example here is for Rising Threes. So this is a class group that we've used, and we'll analyse that and we'll see. And if you have a look at this one, there's a particular area in physical development where the children are doing really well in this class group, so that's good to see. And then we've obviously got one child at the bottom. All the other children are on track, which is great to see. There's obviously some concern with this one child at the bottom here, where they have come up as their actual age is 34 to 35 months, but they're scoring low here. And this may mean that they have some intervention, or they may be classed as having some additional support. So they may have an individual education plan, because the differential between their actual age and what they're scoring at is quite low. So that will be flagged up in here. And then on the next one, this is boys. So this is where we get all of the boys from across the nursery and we put them together and we look at those things where they are seeing where, do we have a high percentage of children that are coming up as red? Do we have a high percentage of the boys coming up as purple? Are the majority on track? And again, we look for patterns. So we look as a snapshot, just sort of looking at the colours, but we then dig a little bit deeper and we see if there are patterns within each subject area. So are there some particular issues in one area like physical development or communication and language? And we'll then try to unpick reasons for that, and again work out what we can do to strengthen teaching and learning in that area, or the things that we offer in the nursery in that particular learning area. So it provides us with really valuable data which ensures that we can constantly be quality improving the nursery and making sure we're getting better and better at what we do, making sure that our teaching and learning is strong. So overall, as I say, the strength of the nursery comes from our early intervention by doing the analysis that we do twice a year. We not only get a snapshot of each of our individual children to provide that to parents to make sure that individual children are on track, we're also able to produce analysis across the nursery so that we can look at identifying areas or aspects that children need more focus or help with. And then if we do this early enough and have put that early intervention in, which is the whole point of the early years, and making sure that we are keeping a check of children's learning and development in these early years so that early intervention can be put in. Because if we do this early enough, then we can ensure that children are more than ready for school and they have the very strong foundations for their future learning when they leave us and they go on to school, which is a massive part of what we do at the nurseries. We want to make sure that the children have everything that they need to have the future success that they'll have in their learning and development as they go on to school. So that's given a snapshot of our tracking system that we have. If you have any questions, please contact us and we'll be more than happy to answer them. Thanks very much.